Well, William Lawrence is a professor of political science and international affairs at the American University. He joins us live from Washington. Welcome to the program. We heard President Zelenskyy telling the UN Security Council that Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy grid were a crime against humanity. What is Russia's strategy here, given the harsh winter conditions in Ukraine, and how far will Putin go?
Well, you've begun answering your own question, as all good questions do. It is a war crime or crime against humanity under UN law to attack civilian infrastructure and make civilians suffer in wartime deliberately. And that is Russia's strategy because they are losing the war militarily, not quickly, as a lot of reports imply, but slowly, grinding away on the ground. They are losing the war to the extent that Crimea is back in the conversation, retaking Crimea, which would be hard, but increasingly within the grasp of some scenarios of what could happen because of their failures on the battlefield and whole, Russian platoons basically collapsing, some of them just sort of handing their weapons over. Because of these strategic and tactical defeats on the battlefield, Russia wants to wear down the civilians and wear down European civilians and get them bickering about the price of fuel and inflation and all of that, get the Ukrainians bickering about their best way out. And he has a divide and conquer strategy to sort of grind away at things to the point that he can get to a ceasefire he can live with.
And that grinding away, I mean, when you see a Russian airstrike killing a newborn baby at a hospital in Zaporizhia, that really does demotivate, doesn't it? How much more intense do you expect Russia's attacks to get? One of my previous correspondents said that, these sort of attacks were from Russia's playbook in Syria.
Yeah, I mean, Russia is in part responsible for the killing of 500,000 civilians in Syria, and Russia is increasing the numbers of civilians it's killing in Ukraine, a country that supposedly was its sister country that always was Russian, and Ukrainian identity doesn't exist, and yet increasingly Putin has to undermine his own effort in Ukraine by turning more and more Ukrainian civilians against him. But his wish is to wear them down because wars end when both sides are worn down, and he wants to wear down the Ukrainian civilians. I don't think this will work in the short term. And since the Ukrainian strategies are shifting right now to more aggressive, we're much further from a ceasefire than we were even 2-3 months ago. And so none of these Russian strategies are working now, although they could work over the longer term.
And when you hear the European Parliament call Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, what goes through your mind, and what impact can that really have?
Well, on one level, anyone deliberately killing civilians could be called a terrorist, although there are much more narrow divisions of terrorism. And yet they are terrorizing the population, and this is a state form of state-sponsored terrorism. So in that respect, I kind of agree with the MEP determination, which isn't an official European view yet, but things are moving in that direction. I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
Yeah, what impact can that have? The fact that the European Parliament has called it or designated Russia a state sponsor of terrorism? Or is it just a label?
Yeah. No. Look at North Korea, look at Iran. I mean, all of these sanctions flow from the designations. And so the designations don't have necessarily automatic consequences, except in terms of rules about financing of terrorists and that sort of thing, which do matter. But I would expect all kinds of new sanctions to flow from Europe, both as a group and individual countries, and from around the world once these types of designations take place.
Great. Thank you so much for explaining that importance there. William Lawrence, live there from Washington. Thank you so much.